Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video. And as per my last one, I requested if you guys wanted me to do a video about where should you be on the map, what should you be trying to do based on your specialization in Battleground Blitz in order to maximize the value of your character and increase the likelihood that you're going to be winning more Battleground Blitzes than you are losing. And this is kind of the matrix tier list that I have come up for this. It's broken down into 3 categories, whether you should be focused solely on objectives, a little bit of both team fight and objective, or only team fight. And obviously this is entirely dependent on maps, so I'm going to be covering all of those specifics as well, but we have a lot of specializations to cover, so let's get started here. We've got the Arms Warrior. Now for me personally, the Arms Warrior is going to be more of a team fight oriented specialization. The main reason for this is that it brings Sharpened Blade, which reduces the effectiveness of enemy healing, which is the best way to increase your value in that type of situation. It doesn't really have the best 1v1, but in certain situations when you have Intimidation, which is your fear available, you can sometimes go off into side nodes and try and take a base by yourself, but you need to assess what class is there and how many crowd control breakers they have. And this is why I think that Warrior is a little bit more oriented around team fight, because a lot of classes can break out of fear, and fear isn't, it's just 1 CC. Usually classes need to have more than 1 CC that's significant enough in order to take a base, or they have to have strong 1v1 in order to focus around kind of like solo objective play. So for me, Arms Warrior is more of a team fight class. You get a Wrathy Basin, you want to go with the big cluster and focus on getting the most value that you can, which is going to come from Sharpened Blade and the amount of damage that you can do in a team fight. Fury Warrior is the same. You provide the Mortal Strike effect that stacks up over time. You can similarly, go to an off base with a Fear. Obviously, on flag carrying maps, you will want to shift from team fight to targeting the flag carrier. That just goes without saying on basically any class, to preface that, but it's the same deal. You're going to get most of your value from the team fight and then being aware after that to basically go wherever the biggest cluster is. That's why generally these classes are considered weaker as well. If you're a class that falls into this category, it becomes a bit harder because objective play is a lot more valuable in a lot of cases. Destruction Warlock is a tough one, because I think that it does get most of its value from team fight. You do a lot of overall damage, so you just want to constantly be engaged. You have a lot of lockdown and CC for enemy healers as well, with Spell Lock and Coil and Shadow Fury. You can take both healers out of the game with a double Coil. So for me, Destruction Warlock and the ability to Shadow Rift enemies onto different areas of the map, off of a base like Silver Shard Mines. You don't really have the high mobility. You have okay 1v1. I think for me, mostly you're going to want to be focused on team fight. You can run the Succubus pet and get some extra CC and take a base like that, but I think most of your value on Destro comes from team fight specifically. For Enhancement Shaman, I think it's the same thing. You're going to feel more value in team fight, the disruption that you can provide to enemy healers with interrupts, the static field totems to pull and clump enemies together for your allies. These are going to be like the main points where you get a lot of value. Although I'd say maybe as Enhanced, you could possibly try and ninja more bases, but still the only CC you have really to cap is Hex, because you can't cap the base while channeling Lightning Lasso. So your crowd control is limited in terms of options for taking like an off base, but the 1v1 can be pretty decent with the amount of healing that it has. So you could be a little bit more lenient than these others, but I don't think it's as distinct. Shadow Priest, same type of deal. I think this is a more team fight oriented spec. I'll keep this organized based on melee. Having Side Fiend, and just putting this in a team fight when you stun silence healers and just doing a high overall amount of damage with dots, that's going to be where you're getting most of your value. Your 1v1 is still pretty decent though, and you have Psychic Scream obviously for trying to cap bases, but much like Warrior, a lot of classes have crowd control breakers, so things like Paladins are going to be better at taking those off cards because they have multiple ways to break crowd control on themselves, and they have multiple CCs that allow them to take those side bases a lot better than you, and that's the main comparison that I would make. Marksmanship Hunter, and again, this goes without saying, if the flag carrier has a flag, you should switch to the flag carrier. Marksmanship Hunter, I think, is also more of a team fight oriented specialization. You just do a really high amount of burst damage. You want to play Diamond Ice Trap. You can crowd control enemy healers this way. Focus on just mauling them down with range damage, and really building momentum for your team. Outlaw Rogue is one where you can actually do a lot of scoreboard damage. It's actually kind of surprising the amount of damage that it can do. But as a rogue, your main goal is going to almost always just be objective oriented. So this is taking side bases by yourself. This is harassing the enemy flag carrier and sapping them and preventing them from getting across the map. So if you're in a situation where like you have no team fight classes, you could go to the team fight and do okay, but your main focus should likely be on objectives. And Battleground Blitz can present you situations like that, so it's important to take it into account. Preservation, Evoker, healers in general, it's a bit hard here because basically if you're a healer that can carry the flag, you should be basically objective only. And Preservation, Evoker can carry the flag, but for this instance, I'm going to put it on both. I think Preservation in a team fight is really good, especially like Scouring Flame, AoE Purge. The amount of damage it does and just the raw healing output that it has is really good. But you have strong objective play as well. So with healers, your main goal basically is to soak as many of the enemy DPS as possible. So you want to be on the map wherever the majority of the enemy DPS are, and you're almost distracting them. So this is like a Wrathy Basin. You want to go to the main team fight and hope that the enemy team has sent more DPS to that node than yours did. And you just kind of spin and you hold that base forever. But then obviously as a healer, you'll be backing up the objective. So I think both is a fair territory for this. Ret Paladin is another one where you can do both. You're really good at just defending a base because you have tons of crowd control breakers and you have multiple long CCs to cap a base. So it's really good for just avoiding that. But you can also go into the team fight. Let's say you've got like rogues and rets and you got a lot of objective only and a lot of both. Then the objective only should do the objective onlys and you should join the team fight because you actually do have really good overall damage as well. Assassination Rogue, same type of deal. Basically focus on the objectives, although maybe like Assassin out of all the rogue specs could probably be the most likely to enter team fight. I think having Garrote as a silence and the amount of AoE damage that you can do is valuable, kidney shots on healers and stuff like that. But generally speaking, Rogue is just really good because of the CC it has to cap. Although I would say Assassination is a little bit less. I'm tempted to actually put this on both. You can do both, but you should do objective first if your team doesn't have any other classes for objective kind of deal. And maybe that's the better definition for this. So I'll put it in both for now. Fire Mage, this is kind of a both. You can cap bases with Ice Wall. You have Polymorph, really good tools to cap. Fire Mage is honestly not that bad in Battleground Blitz. I've seen a couple getting really high rated with it. It's okay, I would say, in Battleground Blitz. It has all the main core tools that a mage has, and it's really good in those situations. It can team fight, but I would say if you have these classes and a mage, that the mage should probably be doing like objective-based things, and then these classes should be team fighting. I think you get more value from being objective-oriented if you're in a composition like that. Beast Mastery Hunter is tough because I think it's just honestly not very great. I think it's way better at defending bases. So for me, I think it's kind of like an objective-only spec. Now, this makes it sound like you're supposed to harass the enemy flag carrier as a BM hunter, and I don't think that's true. So this is more so just like you should probably be the dude that sits at the stables or something, when the game starts. You should be the back defender. I don't think your damage is as valuable in team fight. You have some decent tools for capping bases, but it's mostly just about you're a really good spinner, I guess. So a little bit more objective focused, at least in my view at the moment from what I've seen. Affliction Warlock, this is another team fight oriented one. I think you're way better at that than anything else. So we'll put you at like the top of the team fight for the range DPS. Just go into the main fight. Same thing as Destruction with your interrupts, coils, and Shadow Furies, and just raw amount of damage output. You're going to be way more team fight oriented. Boomkin is a little bit of both. You can do, I'd say you're weaker at objective only. It can be tougher than like a Feral Druid. Feral Druid can more easily 1v1 classes and take bases, so I am leaning more towards teamfight. You're probably like the best of the team fights. You can play Starfall on teamfight oriented maps in AoE. You can play single target builds on Cop Mogu and on flag carrying maps. That kind of goes for any of these specs. If you have a single target versus AoE build, that's generally where you're going to flex them between. Demon Hunter is a bit of both. You can defend bases, hold bases, have a lot of defensive cooldowns to rotate through, decent CCs, but you can also participate very well in the team fight and provide a lot of extra damage as well in those instances, and you bring up Mortal Strike. So I think Demon Hunter, you can do both. So if you're on a team that doesn't have any objective classes, you could be the side objective character, but if you've got side objective classes, then you could also be the team fight. So you got a little bit more flexibility. Demonology Warlock is just kind of bad overall. I'm not even going to put it on the list here. I think Demonology Warlock is just bad. Your pets just permanently keep you in combat, and they spawn randomly, and you can't get on your mount ever, and you just move so slowly because of it. It's a rough one. Ellie Shaman is easily team fight only. Probably comes in on like the lower end as well. It's tough to get like a huge amount of value out of Elemental in Battleground Blitz, but your main focus should be team fight, trying to do maximum damage, wind shearing, static fields, pulling enemies around, stacking them up together, and trying to like set them up for your team in order to get kills. Survival Hunter This is one that might come as a bit of a surprise, but I think it's also objective only. This one can ninja bases by itself very easily. You can even harass enemy flag carriers with the Diamond Ice Trap, much like a rogue with sap or something like that. You can kind of be like the tactical assassin of the team. You do have decent damage, much like Outlaw, to do other things, but I think your main focus on things like a Radley Basin should be taking bases by yourself. So focus on getting good at your 1v1 type of deal. Same is true though with all of these. If somebody is holding the flag, then you should turn your attention, but you can also be good at defending your own flag carrier as well. Augmentation, team fight only with this one. You do have mechanics like swoop and stuff to bring enemies to ledges in bad positions, which could maybe give you a bit of both, but I feel like it's not that great in 1v1. Probably just better off buffing your team in the main team fight. A Resto Shaman, this is a hard one. Again, you can be a decent flag carrier. I think you're going to be doing a little both as a healer. Your main goal, again, as a healer is to be on the map where the most amount of the enemy DPS are, so you can soak them, basically for an exchange, while your objective-only classes or your team fight classes are trying to overwhelm the enemy team in other areas on the map. For Frost Death Knight, now this is a little bit of both because you're very good at stopping flag carriers with Chains of Ice. So much like these classes, whether you're holding a base at the beginning or you're harassing the enemy FC, I think it's going to be being a bit of both just because of Chains of Ice. You're going to want to always spam Chains of Ice on enemy FC. This is like one of the main goals of being a Death Knight is just Chains of Ice and preventing people from getting certain objectives. And then once you've done that, if there's a major team fight nearby that you need to contribute to, obviously you'll be entering that team fight. Frost Mage, same thing as Fire Mage. It's going to be a little bit of both. You have great tools in order to take bases by yourself, really strong 1v1 with alter time and how many cooldowns you have and how many crowd control breakers you have. So you are really good at objective, but you can be decent at team fight as well, doing a lot of overall damage. So I think it's fair to say that if you got all of these classes and you're the mage and there's none of these, then you can play objectives. If there's a lot of objective classes and not a lot of team fight classes, you can go into the team fight. Resto Druid, it's kind of like Demo. It's just not very good, so maybe we'll rank it at the end here. Holy Paladin, it's getting a lot better. Its throughput is just really good. Its mana retention is really high. With this one, you can actually ninja bases a lot. You can use Searing Glare to prevent enemies from attacking a flag, which is something that's really cheeky. I don't see enough paladins doing that. And you can also AoE Blinding Light and Hammer of Justice. So like out of all the healers, I'm thinking like maybe Mistweaver could be a little better with Song of Chi-Ji, but you can definitely like take bases. You're really good at being like the healer that roams around and takes bases, maybe with a DPS because of how much CC you have and CC breakers you have to spin. So it's gonna be a little bit of both. Maybe I'll put it a little lower. I don't think it's as good as Preservation, but definitely you're capable of doing both. Arcane, same deal as Frost and Fire. You've just got the best tools, high mobility, strong 1v1. So if you've got a team that's all team fight classes, you can be the objective-oriented one. Same deal. If you've got a lot of objective-oriented, then you can join the team fight. Feral Druid is one where I think you should be focused on objective only. I think because you have such strong 1v1, I think this is better than Outlaw Rogue. You have such strong 1v1 that you can take bases pretty easily by yourself. You can hold and defend them because you have stealth. You have tools like Bash and Cyclone in order to take bases, so you got those two. Maybe main downsides, you don't have a lot of like crowd control breakers yourself, but I think generally speaking, it's 1v1 is so good. You can go in team fight. I do see Ferals go in team fight. I just feel like you'd get more value out of trying to play objectives than just strictly team fight. But sometimes it does call for these classes to join the team fight. Like maybe if you're trying to take a base on Gilneas against a Death Knight, it might be harder to do that as these classes. It might just be better to be in a team fight. So take that with a situational, you know. Devastation Evoker, this can be a bit of both. I think with the tools that it has, with Sleepwalk, it's got okay 1v1. I feel like with Obsidian Scales or Renewing Blaze, you can like pretty easily navigate around, but it's not going to be as strong as these classes. I don't think you'll probably struggle. So for this one, this is probably the hardest one. I'm going to leave that one for a little bit later. Windwalker Monk, really strong 1v1. That's the main goal, but you also provide MS in team fights. So you're not totally useless there. So for me, I think this is like a little bit of both. Demon Hunter's probably better than Frost DK. Windwalker, you can do both. You've got strong 1v1. You add a lot to team fight as well. You do really good overall damage. So I think when you're in that situation, you can basically just go anywhere on the map at that point, and you're going to be able to see success. Holy Priest, you're kind of team fight with this one just because you can't move. You're just stuck in one spot. for the most part. Almost every other healer except priest, right, has at least some tools to like ghost over for freedom and mount up and sprint and kind of get away. And I know you can play like hero talents on priest and get some mobility, but it can be if you have a death knight or someone snaring you, I don't think it's really the same as far as trying to like get away from an engagement like that. Also, you're really good against these counter dot classes by going into angel form and using mass dispel to reset all their dots. So I think you get a lot of value on that front, and also having an undispellable stun is really good value in order to disrupt enemy healers, to allow your team fight classes in order to win the engagement that they're in. So I think that's generally where you'll find the most value. Discipline priest, it's kind of the same deal. I think team fight oriented more so, just because you have really high raw output, whether it's damage or healing, just really high raw output, and your mobility is kind of limited. But you can be the flag carrier. So maybe, I've never seen a Holy Priest flag carrier, but I think just because you can be the flag carrier, maybe we should put you on both. I think you're also a lot higher than that, but we'll put you on the rankings a little higher. I think you can do both. You should be, if there's no other like main flag carrying class, Discipline Priest is actually a really good flag carrier. Tank spec should almost always be objective oriented. Blood DK is about like abducting the other healers and stopping them from getting to their bases and spinning. Flag carrying, that type of deal. I don't really see a lot of tanks, but basically that their entire role, it's not really to be in the team fight. It's to basically hold the base at the back, or to carry the flag, or to disrupt and annoy, basically. So you're way more objective oriented with these ones. Mistweaver, I would also say, is the most objective oriented healer. You're the main flag carrying class in the game. You have a ton of mobility in order to get away from things, but you also have amazing team fight. Honestly, you can do anything as a Mistweaver, as long as you're playing your main goal correctly, which is going to be carrying the flag, or well, basically just carrying the flag, and then also, I don't know, this should probably be both, because your team fight is crazy as well. But if you've got maps like Silver Shard Mines, you can take the crystal in the middle, run that thing back and forth. So yeah, you can basically just do anything. It's just the god one. Subtlety Rogue, best objective only spec in the game. Just strongest 1v1 in the game, can escape any situation, tons of cooldown reduction for all of its powerful tools in order to cap bases, and I'd say you're more valuable kind of just roaming side cards, off targets, and more objective 1v1 gameplay. Unholy Death Knight, this one's going to be a bit of both. I think that the Chains of Ice again and your AoE damage gives you the options to kind of, you want to be focusing on just keeping enemies from leaving the team fight, keeping them as snared as possible, moving between objectives, stopping flag carriers, death grips, and things like that. So you can do a bit of both. Guardian Druid, tank specs again, you're going to be objective only focused. And now we got the 3 hard specs. So Demonology, I put all the other warlock specs on team fight, so I feel like you can defend the base like a hunter. Maybe you can, I don't see you ninjaing a base, just because you have a lot of different DRs of CC, but I don't think they're long enough to actually cap anything. It's 1v1 is not great, although like the fact that you could spin with your pet, it kind of depends. I think with this one I'm going to put both, because you have Mortal Strike. So if your team doesn't have Mortal Strike in the team fight, you should be in the team fight, and if your team does have Mortal Strike, you should just sit at stables and defend it. You're probably going to feel a bit better in those environments. Devastation Evoker, I think you're probably mostly going to be focused on team fight. You're definitely coming up a little higher in terms of like the overall rankings for this, but you should mainly be focused on team fight. I feel like ranged DPS in general, it's usually you like want one melee that has mortal wounds or something like that, and then a lot of ranged. So that way they're not compromising their positioning a ton, but you do a lot of AoE damage with mass disintegrate. Don't have like a ton of tools in order to ninja a base, so you're probably going to want to focus more on team fight. Resto Druid, you're kind of just going to do whatever you can not to lose. I just don't think it's that strong right now in Battleground Blitz, but for Resto Druid, like you can try and flag carry if there isn't a monk. But if there's a better flag carrier, you shouldn't flag carrier. I don't think you should flag carry. I think you just die relative to the best flag carriers. It's like if both teams don't have any of the best flag carriers, then maybe you can flag carry. You can take off bases with Cyclone and Bash. I'm gonna put you on both, but Resto Druid is just not very good at the moment. So being aware of that, still your main goal as a healer is to just be on the map where the most amount of enemy DPS are, to kind of soak their attacks, and that's going to be your main goal. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope it's got you thinking better of like, where does your class fit in terms of what type of map it is, what type of play style should you be going for in order to maximize the likelihood of success in Battleground Blitz. I am streaming every day. I just pushed over the 24, I think almost 2,500 threshold. Been playing actively at 2,700 MMR. So you want to follow me live, my stream stream is linked in the description down below. But other than that, thank you very much for watching the video. I hope that it helps you out, and I will see you in the next one.